Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our seminar this afternoon. I am Joan Kellerman, and I'm the Vice President and Classic 50 Coordinator. And I'd like to introduce Lynn Hayes back here. He is a Brooklyn banker and a Classic 50 officer. So we're the team of the Classic 50 together. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you our first speaker, who is Greg Pettis. Greg is a Vice President of Advanced Planning and an author. He will do our first presentation, and along in this seminar, we have two gentlemen, Max Cook and Josh Jacoby back here, and they're with the Financial Services Advisor with the Bank 50 also. So, great.
Thank you, Joan. I appreciate all of you've done to help make this a great event. Let's give her a round. Good afternoon, everyone. What a good-looking group. You know, we're one of the first groups that have used this newly decorated room. It's great to have you here. I'm Greg Pettis, Vice President of the Advanced Planning Department. I'm a CFP, Certified Financial Planner. And my role in the next 45 minutes or so is to share with you comprehensive financial planning. What is that? Let's talk about it. Well, the first thing it's not is a sale of a product, so you can just all let your guards down. We produce written plans after listening to your goals and your expectations and concerns. We're a fee-based financial planner. So I don't sell products. I work with all the people that you've gathered as your trusted advisory team. So I work with people like Willie Sheehan here today, and your CPA, your investment advisors, everyone on the team. Because what we found here at the bank is most of you have a lot of pieces of the puzzle already implemented. You have the attorney who's drafted documents, but I don't know that the CPA has any copies of those. And the CPA is advising tax strategies, but the investment advisors don't know about those. And they're competing against each other. Nobody seems to have a blueprint about what you want to get done. And so that's what we're about, is helping you to create a blueprint of a plan for your future. We try to be thorough and objective, and generally we produce 50 to 150 pages of customized planning for you. We have a fee structure that we could talk about based on the depth and the breadth of the issues. Sometimes people come and say, hey, Greg, I just need confirmation on one issue. When should I take Social Security? Or we're trying to protect our future against the ravaging cost of healthcare. Or we have a grandson that we'd like to help with some college funding. So we can do a one-off with one issue, or we could do a comprehensive plan and tie together your business with your individual planning and all the things that the attorney, CPA, and the other trusted advisors have done. We bring it together in one easy to read document that you can place in front of anybody and say, hey, this is my blueprint. Does your product fit in here? Is what you're trying to sell me fit here? Because this is where I'm going, and this is what I do. Let's jump right into the material. Linda, turn it on. All right. So we are going to be discussing many different portions of financial planning. Some of these might be more important to you than others, so I want it to be as participatory as possible. I'd love to have a hand or two saying, give me more of that, or I have a question on that, so don't feel bad about interjecting at any time. Last session, and there was very little interest in the education funding. So we just barely touched on that, but we can go as deep as you want in these 45 minutes. We'll have lots of time for hands to come up, and we'll answer your questions as we can. But setting goals, taking inventory, cash flow and net worth analysis, knowing your risk profile is so key. Let's jump right into those three elements as our foundation. If I'm going to take a trip, well, let's just say to Egypt. I was listening to McAllister tell me about our trip and showed me great pictures of her time in Cairo, riding the camels around the Sphinx. If I said, I want to be in Cairo, that's my destination. I have to know where I'm at now, of course, and my resources. and what I need to get there. And of course, there's not just one route, there's many different routes to Egypt. And there's not a perfect route for everyone. And I want to know the pros and the cons of each of these routes. That's what we do as advanced planners. So the first thing is we set goals. In the format that I use, I try to do a good job of listening to both partners in the plan. And I like to divide what you tell me into absolute must-haves. We score those 9s or 10s. Got to have X amount for retirement income. Got to have a plan to protect against long-term care. And then there are the wants, and that could be, hey, I want to take a cruise every other year for X dollars. And then there's the wishes. And in this case, I have Kate and Ross, generic couples, and you can see Kate's wishes. She wants to jump out of an airplane. Who would have thought? But I also asked a lot about your expectations and concerns. I think a lot of times it's easy to talk about the positives, the goals, but so often is those things we fear: inflation, taxes, market volatility, instability in the world as a whole, long-term care, pension cuts, Social Security cuts. These are the things we want to address in your plan, and that's what we do. Now, you'll notice there's a score. It's in the upper left portion of that slide, 82%. When we input your goals and concerns, we're going to give a score that is the likelihood of accomplishment, the probability of success for the needs, for the wants, and for the wishes. And later on, we're going to talk more specifically about some of these concerns. But this will be the next step, inventory. And I'm just going to barely touch on the inventory portion, because our trust department, Kim Cessna, Beverly Chapman, and our special guest, Willie Sheehan, the attorney, they're going to go into a lot more of the importance of that. And we have a tremendous document that's on the left side of your pamphlets called Personal Organizer. I've not seen one better than that. It's so thorough. I mean, if you want to pull that out and just take a quick look at it, what I really liked about it, Beverly and Kim, was that it addresses digital assets. Things that we didn't talk about 15 years ago. And you can see a whole page on what do you do with your photographs that are in the cloud? Who's going to manage that? Who can see it when you're gone? So this is part of financial planning, is taking inventory. And it's not just what do I own, and not just who owns it, but how is it owned? For example, what power just 4 little letters of the alphabet can make the difference? JTWROS, joint tenants with rights of survivorship, versus JTIC, JTIC, joint tenants in common. If I have my home in joint tenants with rights of survivorship, then my wife and I have complete 100% access to the entire equity of that home together. At my passing, it's hers automatically. That's joint tenants with rights of survivorship. But if we had it in joint tenants in common, I don't have to leave it to her. My portion could go to someone else that I list in my will. JTIC. You see, so if you just say to someone, oh, our home is jointly owned, well, how is it jointly owned? These are things that we cover in our planning. For those of you that are visually oriented, this has been a nice pictorial for me. It shows every bit of inventory that we will be doing on a comprehensive plan. Everything. So you can see there that it's even personal items. All, if you're looking at art and collectibles, if that's something you want to make sure it gets to the right people, we get it together in a document for you. Next thing we look at is cash flow. Right? So we're looking at our resources, not just how much, but timing of cash flow, tax consequences of cash flow, and a concept that I love to discuss with Josh and Max, our investment professionals, is not just diversification of having your assets in different classes, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, cash, but also tax diversification. Taxed now, CDs, cash, mutual funds. Taxed later, 401k, SEP, simple, IRAs, annuities, those are deferred. And then what would be the next category? If it's taxed, not taxed now, not taxed later, it'd be taxed never, tax-free, tax exempt. And what we find is, though someone could be completely diversified by asset class, the right mixture of stocks, bonds, and cash and so forth, they may not have a desirable mixture of tax ramification on the assets. We find a majority of American assets are in the tax later. 401, IRA. You think about it in your own picture, it might be over 60, 70% of your wealth might be in the tax number. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about it, but at age 73, the government tells us how much we have to take from our tax later. In essence, we lose control of that, don't we? We're told, even though I don't want it. Now, that number has moved just recently. If you were born in 1960 and older and more recent, that number is age 75. But we want to work with your accountant to determine, would it not be a good idea to consider moving some of the tax later that is going to be forced out upon us in unknown brackets? Take some of that now in known lower brackets historically. We're in some of the lowest tax brackets we've been in since I've been in business 38 years. Where do you think brackets are going? Where do you think tax rates are going? So this is what some of the things we do when we talk about cash flow and net worth analysis is tax ramifications of the cash flow. Does that make sense? How are we doing? All right. Now this, I just put this slide in because though I'm sure everyone here has a budget, you may know some of the younger folks in your family that need to see a slide like this. We can help young couples with creating a budget. We have good software for that and get them on track to a disciplined future. This is probably one of the most key, it's probably the key component of the first three principles. In my opinion, we all should know our risk profile. If I said the market's going to drop 20% tomorrow, God forbid, but if I said I knew that, some in this room would say, can't wait. I've been just looking forward to buying more of my favorite equities. Others would say, get me out. I can't stand this. This is called a risk profile. This is what each of us should know is how do we feel about the potential loss of principal? When I say risk in this capacity, is how do I feel about the potential risk of losing my principal? There's other kinds of risk. There's inflation, money purchase risk, there's geopolitical risk, there's financial risk inherent in every company. But what we're talking about is, how do I feel if I lose money? This is something that you can measure from 1 to 100. We score ones when someone has their cash buried in a mason jar in their backyard. That's a 1. They don't even trust the FDIC. Then if you're out to the racetrack every paycheck and you're putting your money out there on the racetrack, you're 100th. And so everyone in the room has a number, and it changes because we change and the world we live in is changing. I would recommend highly that you talk with your investment advisor about your risk profile score. It probably has changed. You may not want to go 85 miles an hour to if you're driving up 55 to go to Lincoln, when you can take it at 50 and get there safe and sound. and we'll help you with that. We do plans together. And here's a matrix that you've all seen. The higher the risk of an asset, the higher the potential reward, but also the higher chance of it losing money. I mean, there's some of those classes that you can see. Options, commodities are up there in the speculative, mostly. Quality companies like blue chip stocks in the middle, and FDI insurance down on the component, the solid foundation. What can we do? Well, set goals, take a look at our inventory and our risk profile. Any questions or comments so far? All right, let's jump right into the meat of the program. I'm going to take a quick survey. How many would like to spend most of their time here today on retirement planning issues, Social Security, that type of thing? How many are interested in the education funding ideas?
No.
Let's do them both. All right, so the first thing that we know is that not every child is cut out for a 4-year traditional education. And I had 4 boys and 2 girls. 3 of my children went the 4-year route. And one was blessed with a full ride at U.S. Naval Academy, and he's a pilot for the Navy. Another one said, hey, I just want to be a gemologist, and I think I'll get a certificate, a diploma at Gemological Institute of America, where she's grading diamonds. And she went to school for 2 years and had a lot less overhead when she came out. So, there's no absolute correct way, and we should, again, be sensitive to the fact that paying for a 4-year traditional education for a child that maybe doesn't want it or doesn't need it for their gift set might not be a good investment. How many of you have heard of FAFSA? The free application for federal student aid. All right, so every October 1st, the window opens and our seniors in high school go into the FAFSA form, and we as parents are there filling it out with our tax forms and so forth. And this is so that the Department of Education can calculate our EFC, expected family contribution. All right, now there are certain secrets to the FAFSA, and I share this in one of the chapters of my book we co-authored with an attorney here in town on financial planning. There are 4 classes of assets that the Department of Education does not look at. Okay? 1, the equity of your home. 2, that would be qualified retirement plans, like we talked about. It's in that big tax later bucket. IRAs, 401ks, SEFs and Simples, and all those tax deferred plans. A third one is annuity. Most of the colleges are not looking at annuities or cash value of life insurance. 4 asset classes that don't show up on the radar. Now, this fact means nothing unless we do some planning. FAFSA is going to ask you for your tax returns from the year prior to the year that you're in. So this October 23, they want to have your 21 tax return and 21 information. So we could have sat down 2 or 3 years ago and done some possible asset reallocation and moved money that's maybe sitting in cash into equity of your home, or maybe increased your qualified retirement plan contributions. You see how financial planning in advance, a couple of years or so, could enhance your children's opportunity for grants and scholarships. And another thing is we would highly recommend, as you prepare or you help your children and your grandchildren prepare for the college years, is create a file cabinet and have a well-organized drawer for everything they've ever done, all their awards, all their accolades, all their hobbies, their interests, and so forth. Freshman year is a great year to get involved in leadership and get your hobbies going and so forth. Your sophomore year is when the parents should consider reallocating assets by the sophomore year. The junior year is a great year to take practice ACTs. And there are months of the year that you could take an ACT and the results come back telling you exactly what you missed and where you missed it. So that then, if you're really serious about helping the child get as much money as possible, you could take them to an ACT class and raise their score based on the results of their practice exam. There are several companies in our area that provide test taking tips and ACT classes. Two of my children took that opportunity and it raised their ACT scores well, very well. So the senior year, of course, let me go back to the junior year, really is the key year. If your student needs help writing an essay, in my experience, my opinion is the essay is probably the magnet that attracts scholarships and doors, because you're going to get a lot of high GPAs, talented people stack their applications up at good schools. And if I'm a school administrator, I don't have time, I just want to look at the essay. And I want to see what this person is really about by the power of that couple pages. And so my opinion would be get an English teacher or someone that can help your student to create some great essay work. Right? And then keep those things in the file drawer, because you don't want to have to hunt for every bit of information each time you fill out an application. You can just use one application and one essay right after another. So any questions so far? Any comments on the education portion of a comprehensive plan? Okay. So this is a key component. Now, of course, not every child even has the same pathway on the education plan. For example, one of my 6 children is a special needs child. He's very gifted in his own ways, but James is receiving federal Social Security and state of Ohio Medicaid. And so I couldn't, when I did my estate plan, I couldn't say I'm going to leave 1/6 of my estate to each of my children, to be fair. If I did, I would disqualify, and we'll hear more of this from Willie. I would disqualify James from Social Security, disability, and state of Ohio Medicaid. So I had to get together with an attorney to do a competent and a correct special needs trust. And these are some of the mistakes people make when they do plans for their dependent. Putting the assets in the dependent's name is a mistake. You disqualify them. Leaving it to siblings and hoping everything works out. Well, we probably have seen how that happens, how that can work out in families. And also not properly completing beneficiary designations. Our trust department and Willie will also be addressing that. Dying without a will and without a trust, that'd be the worst thing. So truly, this is one of those places where planning to fail is really, if you're failing to plan, you are planning to fail to help this person. And there's a lot of need here. We address that in our planning. Now, when we look at retirement plan, it's sometimes easy just to, focus on investment returns. And that's the fun part, isn't it, guys, back there, these investment advisors, is getting that extra % or 2 of return. But what I also like to look at, and I hope you can read that left column, what happens if we go through another Great Recession? What happens if inflation really takes off, like the 1981-2 time period that many of us remember? What happens if we have low returns, but worse than that, we have stagnation, we have this no growth and inflation? What if I die too soon, or worse, in some cases, I live too long? I outlive my money. These are the kinds of concerns that we want to address in a plan. And we do that in writing, And when we do that, we give you option A, B, and C. These are the things that people are doing. Here's the pros and here's the cons of option A. Here's what's positive and here's what's negative about option B. You could consider this option C, and here's the results that many have found. So it really just kind of opens up opportunity for you with your own blueprint. But we always look for and look at those scores. What we did is we clicked on another Great Recession. What would happen if I went through another 2008-9 recession? Look at the likelihood. It dropped from 82%, which we saw back on Kate and Ross initially, to 80% now on the needs, but only 71 and 67 on the wants and wishes. Well, I don't like that, so I want to make sure I make some adjustments in the options that I'm selecting, and maybe reduce the risk that I'm taking. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about a couple of secret bits of information, I call it, in Social Security codes that would apply to anyone here that has been divorced, but you were married for your ex-spouse for more than 10 years. I won't ask for a show of hands. But I will tell you a cute story. It's true. Johnny Carson was married 4 times. The first 3 wives all claimed off of his Social Security as ex-spouses. And their first names all began with J. I think that's kind of an interesting tidbit there. Anyway, and Johnny never knew it. Just like your ex-spouse won't know. If you're 62 or older, and you were married to your ex-spouse for 10 years or more, and you're unmarried now, so you have to be unmarried, you have the choice of calling the Social Security SSA.gov and getting up to 50% of your ex-spouse's Social Security without them knowing and without interfering with their Social Security at all. They won't even know it, just like Johnny Carson. Every time I share this, it gets really quiet, and I can see the lights coming on in some situations, and it's not always just the people that are here, but maybe it's some of your children that need to hear that, or someone else in your family. So you have to be unmarried, 62, and having been married to the person for 10 years or longer. You say, well, I had two husbands or wives that I was married to for more than 10 years. You get the choice. That's plan A, plan B. You get to choose which one. Now, you may not want to even activate that because your Social Security might be higher than half of theirs. You can only claim one Social Security stream. In essence, it's the highest number. Okay. Pause and see if there's any input or any questions on that. The second slide. Now, these are actual quotes. These are bullet points from SSA.gov. I took it straight from their website. If you're a widow or a widower, and you were married to your ex-spouse for the 10 years or longer, at age 60, 50 if you're disabled. So let's say 60 for most people. You then have the privilege of taking their entire Social Security at your full retirement age. So you'd have to wait. You can take it at 60, but it would reduce down. But if you waited to your full retirement age, which if you were born in 1960 or more recent, your full retirement age is 67. If you were born from 54 to 59, you're at 66 years and 2 months, 66 years, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, 10 months. If you were born at 53 and earlier, your full retirement age is 66. So if you have an ex-spouse, you were married for 10 years or longer, and you're unmarried, you could claim their full retirement when you hit your full retirement age, 66 to 7. These are bits of information that come when we get together with you and talk about your personal situation and customize something that makes sense for you. And again, we always are using the expertise of your attorney for the legal guidance and your CPA for the tax guidance. We, as I say so often, are helping you to get into the baseball stadium, and we point things out to you. The attorney is the one that helps you make sure you step on first and second and third and come on home. So we give you general concepts that can help you, and the attorney and the CPA are dotting the I's and crossing the T's for you. Does that make sense? Okay. One thing is for sure, and we heard this morning from Patrick Sheehan, planning is not a one-time occurrence. When we do a 50 to 150 page plan and we go over it together and it's a blueprint you can live with, that's just the beginning. It's the beginning of a planning process. Things are going to change every, well, year. And we'll want to look back at that document as a living, breathing document, not just take it as one time event. So I believe that planning should be an ongoing process, and we don't want to bore you, but this is a great matrix that Josh and Max work off of all the time on the benefits of different kinds of retirement plans, 401ks, Roths, for SEPs and simples, and defined benefit pension plans. All kinds of opportunities have expanded, by the way, since the midnight hour of 2022, when our government passed the Secure Act 2.0. All kinds of expanded ability to contribute more money into your plans and to have longer periods of deferral, more, let's say, exceptions to penalties, and all kinds of things about the Roth. The Roth was a big focus of this recent legislation. Let's jump right into the last portion of our presentation. And we're going to just touch on, in the estate plans that we help with, it generally starts with documents that Willie and his firm have put together and you bring us. And my job is to just look to see how long ago was that, because I think you'll hear later that these need to be updated regularly. And then we take that structure and the concepts and we bring them into your blueprint. You know, we can say, hey, because you have a special needs trust for the son, we can do these things for the daughters. We can say, hey, because your attorney drafted a good buy-sell agreement for your business, then we can help fund it properly. And oops, I noticed that it was done incorrectly 5, 10 years ago. Here, we're going to make some changes for you. So that's what we do with our estate plan. Is conceptual. But everyone in this room should have wills and or trusts, durable powers of attorney, both for finances and for healthcare. And again, our trust department with Mr. Sheehan are going to go through all the reasons that you should and the differences in these documents. So I'm just touching on them. One thing I don't want to forget is, in my opinion, one of the biggest threats to all of our financial futures, and that is that we're living longer, and medicine is allowing us to continue to, go into octogenarian mode and even into centenarians, and with that, 70% of every couple age 65 and older will encounter long-term care needs. When I look at these figures, I just pulled these out of the web from a source that's very reliable, Genworth, and they're telling me that home health care is $58,000 this year nationally, assisted living at 55, just under 55, and nursing homes nationally are at about $112,000 a year for a semi-private room. Now, we might be able to get it under $100,000 around here, but look at the number in 20 years. In the year 2042, it's just about 4.5% inflation. and that's pretty modest, is we're going to see a double. I was doing a financial plan for a couple who have a very sizable net worth, over 15 million. When we got to this part of the plan, he said, you know, we could probably just buy a nursing home. And I said, yeah, I know, you can just get it. You're self-funded. But she said, and she looked at her husband and said, but you know, you buy crop insurance for the crops. You pay 10 cents on the dollar just in case. You're not going to just sit there and let hail ruin our future. And I said, whoa, she took my slide from me. I said, conceptually, why take $1.40 from my qualified retirement plan, my 401k, and pay 40 cents of tax to give $1 to the nursing home? Why pull $1.20 from my stocks and pay capital gains of 20% to give $1 to the nursing home? And why even take $1 cash to pay if I could devise a plan that I could do this for dimes or quarters? It's called leverage. And we talk about that, and we address long-term care in every plan, even if the couple is in their 30s. Because you can imagine what the cost will be when they're in their 70s and 80s. I generally take a look at what it would cost you to spend 3 years in a nursing type care, a caregiving scenario, when you hit 80. That's usually what I look at. So that could be just the one-off that you want to look at. That could be just the one thing you want to look at. We're here to help you. Last slide. The question is, so what will you do with your legacy? And you may be thinking, well, I don't have a large net worth, not multimillionaire. That's not what I asked. Everyone is going to have a legacy. You're going to leave a legacy. It may not be net worth. It may be in what you imparted to your children and grandchildren. But the gifts that you've got and the many things that you believe in, we can work with your attorney and CPA to bring in what we call value-based planning. What are we talking about? Academia, science, medicine, agriculture. Instead of leaving money to Uncle Sam to do things, well, you may not agree with, you have the right to choose 501c3s, charities, that you believe in, that you can bring into your financial plan for that last chapter, and you can build buildings and pave roads for the things you believe in instead of just defaulting to involuntary social capital. And I think it's important that you can have voluntary social capital, that you choose what happens when you're gone, especially if you have highly appreciated assets. If anything in your lives has a large appreciation, it could be those assets that you might need for income shouldn't be sold and had taxes paid on them. But we might need to speak with our attorneys about bringing in charitable trusts, charitable remainder trusts. If you would like to have an income for the rest of your joint lives, not pay a capital gain, but instead get a tax deduction. Let me make sure you know, any asset that doesn't have debt on it can be used for a legacy with charity and provide you an income jointly for the rest of your lives at the same time with a tax deduction. So that's something that we also talk about, is charitable remainder trusts, charitable lead trusts, working with our attorney friends. All right, so we've covered a lot. I didn't want to finish without saying to any of the business owners in the room, any business owner, I have a lot of energy around that. I have a side business myself. I do a lot of planning with business owners, and I can help you with two of the major things that you're probably thinking about as you get into the fourth quarter of life. One, what does fair mean? One of my children is in the business, 2 children aren't. What are we going to do? What's fair? And the second one is, who can we help develop right now before we depart that can help us take over the business, and we can help mentor them and help strengthen the future of our business. We do this with buy-sell agreements. We do this with valuations. We have our experts value your business, do buy-sell agreements. We just have a couple of slides to show you that we do a lot of one-way buyouts inside families. That is, like, for example, the farmer with one child that is in the farm and has two children that aren't. We create an opportunity for the child that's in the business to inherit the business at the same time being fair with the other non-farming children. Right? Well, that's the end of my material. Again, we have a few moments before the break. If you'd like to ask a couple questions, we're here for you, and I'm also going to be around afterwards. Yes, sir.
You say Johnny Carson's three wives accessed payments? They actually got payments,
Yes,
and that didn't affect his payments either?
correct. In fact, he didn't know it until later. He told the story long afterwards that he discovered it. And you can Google or read it. Yeah. Each of his, well, three of his four wives had been married to him for more than 10 years. And they each got up to 50% of his Social Security.
But he still got what he would have been entitled to.
And it doesn't affect the primary Social Security person at all. They don't even know about it.
They're going broke.
So the Social Security secrets, it's so complex. I mean, we could spend a whole afternoon talking about Social Security. That's an area that's really important as one of the primary sources of supplemental income in retirement. Good question. Yes.
So you talked about, for real estate, tenants by the
Tenants in common,
tenants with.
joint tenants with rights of survivorship,
And what about tenants of the inheritance?
yes, that is probably the most common between couples.
And is that with right of survivorship? Is that transfer automatically?
It is an automatic, yeah. And its uniqueness is that it's used between marriage partners. Yeah, good question. But just a few initials like that can make a huge difference. Whereas each of those three could say, we own it, we own the property jointly. Yes.
Oh, what about long-term health insurance? I think I learned, maybe I know something that ain't so, but that it's so, you can only have it for 3 years after you begin to,
Did you mean that you have to have had a plan in place 3 years
but it'll
prior
only pay
to?
your bills for 3 years.
Oh, that's a good question. And the answer is no, you can have plans that go for life. You can have creative plans nowadays that couple the risk of dying too soon with the risk of living too long in a nursing care facility, combined into one solution. This is something that came about 10, 15 years ago. It's become very popular because so many people were buying the old traditional long-term care. You think about it, if I don't use it, I lose it. If I don't, if I don't lose my health, I'll lose my money, premiums. And it's kind of a lose-lose situation. And so the 50 and older crowd said to the insurance industry, look, we appreciate you helping us, but is this really optimal? And they said, let's try to figure out something. And they said, we could probably take long-term care and couple and bring it together with life insurance. Think about it. Life insurance is going to pay one day. And the insurance companies are saying the only cost to us to pay you while you're living, if you're in a nursing home, is the time value of money. And so now you can determine, if that's the right choice for you, the amount that you want to guarantee to your family, whether you go into a nursing home or you don't, because it's a life insurance policy. It will pay eventually. You see? So now we have all kinds of options. Creative trusts that Willie can talk to us about that help protect against this, eventuality for most of us. But coupling it with life insurance helps because, the risks of dying too soon and living too long are taken together in one strategy. Yes.
So let's say you bought a long-term healthcare insurance policy back in the 90s and you're 101. And you're just starting getting to use it, but it's that point of you're gonna lose it if you don't use it, like if he dies before then. But there's no way, once you're into a policy that's got that set thing, that you can revise it or.
That's a good question. And unfortunately, for the most part, I would say 90% or more, you can't take an old prior generation policy structure and try to just upgrade it into today's more liberal benefits, unfortunately.
Even if you hadn't just started using it yet.
That's correct, because the mortality, and also morbidity tables have changed so much since the 90s.
Yeah.
We've had to rewrite the mortality tables 3 times. The tables today go to 120. And so you can imagine what an insurance company the dilemma that they would be facing today, trying to look at a policy that was geared toward living to, if you lived to 100 back in the 90s, this was a big deal. Now, I had a neighbor that was driving to 103, now, so the morbidity table is so different, they can't just morph it. You have to have a new one. Well, at that age, it's not possible.
And that's the same thing with the life insurance policy that you've been paying for a long time. And once you reached 100 years old, we don't insure it anymore.
Our staff here, our Bank of Springfield investment professionals, they never implement insurance that lapses before 105. A lot of our folks take it out to 120.
But again, if this was one that was purchased way earlier.
Then normally, if that's an old policy, we'd have to read it. And that's one of the things that our staff does, is just objectively, just bring all the insurance policies and put them on the table. We'll look at and read them. And we'll give you a spreadsheet of the pros and cons and what this says and what that means. And that's part of what we do. But the life insurance industry is changing, as every industry. COVID bumped mortality down about a year and caused underwriters to get picky, and we're coming out of that, of course, thankfully, but it's a whole new world.
I've got one more question, if I may. I've never been able to get long-term care insurance because I'm an insulin-dependent diabetic, even when I started like in my early 50s. Could not qualify for it. And I think at that point in time, I had never heard about these long-term care along with the life insurance. So like we found out from my brother and his wife, they got a long-term care, but they're not going to lose it if they don't use it because it's life insurance, or it will go to their children.
Exactly.
So if those policies are out there now, and for we people who couldn't get it in the past because of health problems, is it a little bit easier, do you know, or it just depends?
And yes, because it is life insurance with a long-term care rider or attachment, it's mortality centered, not morbidity. It's mortality. In other words, it's a life policy. The insurance companies are looking at lifespan. And oh, by the way, we'll throw in long-term care. And there's some underwriting that you have to go through about that. Like in the last 10 years, have you had a cane or walker, this, that. But it's easier now to answer you directly. It is easier now to get good answers and coverages, even with the situation that you mentioned, in a life policy than it would be in a long-term care, the old traditional. It's worth looking at. Well, I think I've used my allotted time. I appreciate all of your attentiveness and the participation was great. Thank you. We're going to take a little break now, John?
Yes, sir.